Oh, that's ISO?
Rack it up, I gotta build up the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up, she got her hands on her knees and she bringing the cake out. Smoke it up, I got some gas, some packs, I'm up in the greenhouse.
Cool. So, Donald, we're here, mate. We've started.
Yeah.
So, mate, I just want to get straight into it. You know, you're a coach that specifically works with dads. You want to get them into shape.
Yep.
But I was reading a post on your Instagram earlier, and it was, it kind of resonated with me. It was, how bodybuilding made you a better dad. And, that's one of the biggest reasons why I started. But I just wonder if you could start off but just by elaborating on that, because it's such a big thing going into competition prep. And, what did you mean when you did that post?
So for me, when my daughter was born, so before I was into bodybuilding, been a coach for about since 2012. So what's that? Just over 11 years. But in the past, I always trained for rugby. So I played all the way through school, college, university, got up to playing at like a semi-professional level, and then moved back across to Lincolnshire. So when my wife was pregnant with Willow, I was playing for like a local team. And then when Willow was born, I went and played like 1 week of like one season. And it was like, I just can't do this. Like, I can't be leaving my wife with the newborn in basically like the demon hour. So like 5 till 7 p.m. when all babies are in absolute pain. I can't be leaving her from like at that time on a Tuesday and a Thursday and then all day on Saturday just because it's just not fair. So I stopped playing rugby. I was still PTing at the time, but I think there's a bit of a mental switch that a lot of like dads go through when their partner's on maternity leave. They just go full on work mode. Everything else gets put on the back burner because she's only earning like 80%, 60%, 50% of what she was. Your mind is just, right, I've got my family at home that I need to provide for. So every hour under the sun, I was in the gym coaching. I was training on my lunch breaks. So like I'd train for like 45, 50 minutes and then just like wolf food down. But because I didn't have that thing that I was training towards, I was just kind of just milling about. Like I'd download like a program online and run that for a bit. And then, it's like shiny object syndrome. And just because I didn't have that thing to focus on, so ended up ballooning up in weight, was at like my most unfit ever, would have what I would class as dad bod. Like I have always been in good shape just because I started playing sports from a very, very young age. And just to kind of look in the mirror and not like what you see was a big thing for me. Like people look at those photos and they're like, you don't look like you're out of shape. But to me, I was massively out of shape. So Willow was about 6 months old, and I was like, you know what, enough's enough. Like, I'm going to do something. So I followed this guy. He was an old friend of mine from my rugby days, and just basically jumped into, right, I'm going to do a natural bodybuilding competition next year. So jumped straight. That was in the December. Went straight into a bit of like almost like a pre-prep, then through a building phase through the spring, and then did like a 12 or 13-week prep to compete like in the September of that year. And it was just one of those things where, because it was then a priority for me, I found the time to do all those things that I wasn't doing because I was stepping on stage in a tiny pair of pants. Like I didn't want to be up there and not feel like I deserved to be there. So all those things like the prepping of my food, the planning ahead for when I was going to get my cardio, when I was going to do all my training, it forced me to be more concise with all those things. And I found that actually when it's a priority for me, I can make the time, but I can also have a little bit of balance. So I can also make sure that I'm going out and I am socializing with friends, and that I'm able to do all the things I need to do to be in all those different roles within life. And there's a lot of things that are just fluff that you can either push back or you can completely eliminate. and you find the time to do all those things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you probably, so was that your first bodybuilding competition when you had your daughter already?
Yes, so yeah, she would have been about 6 to 9 months old when I did my first
In the thick of it.
competition.
In the thick of it.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit before that. When I did my first prep, my wife was 8 months pregnant. So I competed as she was, about ready to pop. So I was similar in that sense, but not, we didn't have the kid at that point, but I was still, having to do the extra hours because she was on maternity, and you're having to look after your wife a little bit more, aren't you? You got to do a few more
Yeah.
things, and that was hard enough. And then now I've got two. I've got a 2-year-old, and I forget when he was born. The sleep deprivation is real. I think I think he's about 3 months. And we'll be going into prep next year for my kind of second season. So I always found it made me find time that I never knew I had. Like the early
Yeah.
morning early morning workouts, and getting your steps in and around those other things. Did you find that as well? You found more time because you had to?
Yeah, so it just makes you way more productive just because your time is finite and it is limited. And so for me, right up until like the final 2 or 3 weeks of prep, I had enough time just because, like you said, you'd get up that little bit earlier, or you might be doing your cardio like 9, 10 o'clock at night, but you'd kind of get it done. When we're into those final couple of weeks where it's like 55 minutes of prep, like 55 minutes of cardio every day, then it was starting to have an impact on other things. And I had to like pick and choose what was my priority. So at the end of the day, like a prep is a short-term thing. So yes, it might be 12, 16, 20 weeks long, but to be honest, it's only those last like maybe 4 to 6 where like you're really digging deep, where you're having to make sacrifices. I think a lot of people look from the outside in and they think that you are doing 55 minutes of cardio, you're eating like 1,200 calories from day one, but at the start of prep, you're probably not that much lower than you were in your off season. It's as it gets further in and as the body starts fighting you more, then it takes more of you, but you can still have that little bit of balance. Like I went on holiday, when was it? In the August, and the finals were in September. So there is ways to kind of go around it and to find that balance and still be working towards your goals. But it takes more time, it takes more planning, and that's the bit that people don't want to do. They don't want to sit down, even if it's only 10, 15 minutes on a Sunday, and right, look at my schedule, right? Where am I going to train? Where am I going to prep my food? If you get those things and a plan in place ahead of time, it makes it way easier than when life throws obstacles at you, because you can open your planner up and go, okay, I was going to do it here. Right. There's a block of time over here. Right. I'm going to move that over there, rather than just being in panic mode of, oh shit, I haven't prepped my food today. What am I going to do? Like if you've got that plan ahead of time, it makes life so much more
Yeah,
simple.
and you even planning the date for this podcast when you sent me your planner. I mean, I thought I planned, but I mean you have like 15 minutes spare a fucking day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy, But I think there's always levels to it, right? Just that
Yeah.
little bit of planning of food for us might not seem like a lot, but then I'm sure you find it with your clients as well. Is the first bit of planning is always the hardest bit for clients. And then as they
Yeah.
start building on and adding building blocks onto that, then they eventually get to the level where you're at, and you're 50% better at planning than I am, for sure. But there's always levels. And
Yeah.
do you think that you would have had that level of kind of ability to plan if you hadn't have done something extreme like a show?
I don't I don't think so, just because when you do something that's pushing you, it forces you to get better and it forces you to adapt. When you there's a famous quote, it's something along the lines of like the enemy of success isn't failure, it's comfort. So when you are comfortable when it's not painful enough to make you make a change, but it's also not where you want to be, it's a big, it's a danger zone, because it's like you don't have that impetus to make a change, but by making a change, you're taking a risk, and it's going to take you outside of that comfort zone. When things are painful and things have to change, it forces you to do so. It forces you to adapt. It forces you to think outside of the box. So when you challenge yourself, most human beings are far more capable than they give themselves credit for, and they set limiting beliefs on what it is that they can achieve. Like, I'm sure you've had it where you've had consultations with people. One of the things I do in my consultations is I get people to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 where they feel they are right now in terms of like nutrition, in terms of training, in terms of confidence. And they'll put that, say, anywhere between like 4 and 6. And then you ask them where they want it to be. And the ones that are the most successful, the ones that come in and they're, well, I want it to be a 10, because they want to push it. When somebody's coming in and they're, well, I don't really want to be perfect, or being a bit perfectionist if I put a 10. And it's like, well, if you aim high and you miss, you're still going to be overachieving to what everybody else does. But if you aim for a 7 or an 8 and then you miss, you're still going to be in that middle of the pack and where the average person is.
For sure. And I think people put self limitations on themselves because they've got the fear of failure, right? They don't want to say,
Yeah.
ultimately in 2 years time, I want to step on stage, because that might seem unattainable. I like to, whatever they tell me their ultimate goal is, I'll be so pig-headed. I was like, nah, not good enough. Let's go for something bigger. Let's push those boundaries, because like you say, it's about helping people realize that they can achieve more, but it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
you went to the finals, right, in your first show?
Yeah. No, in my very first show, I came in dead last.
Yeah, so did I.
So in that first season, it was very much a case of, if I was in it for the accolades, then I would have probably quit then. But I loved it. I loved the lifestyle. I loved everything about it. I loved the structure. I loved that I was pushing myself. And for me, it's all about self-improvement. So each time that I step on stage, like, I've seen my placings improve. So I've gone away, I've taken the feedback, I've done the work, I've come back, reassessed, and okay, you've moved up. So I've done 3 competitive seasons now. First one, I came in dead last. Second season out, I was on the fringes of finishing in like the top 3 in terms of like the regionals. And then this season, I think I got 2 second place finishes at regionals, went to nationals and got then a second and a third. So it's one of those things, each time it's taking that step up, and each time you take a step up, you're competing with people at that next level up. And it's, for me, it's that experience of there's always going to be somebody better. So if you're always just looking for that end result, you're never going to be happy, because unless you're Elon Musk, like, there's always going to be somebody with more money. There's always going to be somebody that seems like they've got a better family life. There's always going to be somebody that's got a better physique. But if you fall in love with the process, in the journey of self-improvement, of constantly doing what needs to be done to become the best version of you, and you're only competing with yourself, you can never lose, because each time that you're going out, it's not, I want that trophy. It's, I want to be a better version of me.
Yeah, for sure. And people forget that, right? They forget that, you don't, I've got 5 competitors this year, and we're going to be competing all in our first show of the season. We'll all be together, which is going to be quite cool. All of them first timers. And, it's kind of like a 50-50 split. Half the group are like, I really want to place. I was like, cool. Half the group, like, I just want to do the best I can. And we're just trying to find that middle ground of, obviously, we want to push ourselves and we would love to place, but we have to have the expectation that this is the first time that you've had the bright lights in front of you. You've got the shakes and you're having to pose. We've got to do the peaking right. and there's so many variables. And you had that first experience in your first show, and then how many things do you think you implemented to take it to the next? Because that's a big gap, right? Dead last to okay,
Yeah.
now I'm placing. What was that process like, and how much harder was it for you?
So the first major change I made was I changed my coach. So the first guy who took me through a prep, he was assisted. So he'd prepped guys that were assisted. So natural bodybuilding and assisted bodybuilding, they're similar, but there are differences. So things that I've learned from there, some of the big things are like my preps have to be so much longer. Like assisted guys, you can prep in 12 weeks. My shortest prep out of the two that I've done so far has been 28
Yeah.
weeks. So the one, and another thing is I need to start from a leaner point. So the first two preps I did, I started from peak off season weight and then went straight through prep. So again, the first time through, when I stepped on stage, I wasn't in bodybuilding condition. Like having been in proper bodybuilding condition now, I know I had another 5 kilos of fat to pull off. But as you said, you only learn that through that experience. And when I was down at 70 kilos, like I felt that was the leanest I could get. I felt awful. Whereas like 5 years later, I pulled right down to like 65 kilos. And again, it was only in those last few weeks I was kind of feeling those side effects, because we've done different things in the off season in terms of like pushing body weight up and then doing almost like a pre-prep diet. So a year ago now, I was dieting from September through to December to pull off the initial like 6 or 7 kilos. Came into Christmas, food came back up. So January, February, food came back up, but we were trying to like maintain body weight. So I was down in like the mid 70s then. And then I started prep from like 76 rather than up at closer to like 80, 83. Whereas the next time that I compete, I'll probably try to start like much closer to 70. So that again, I know now I need to get down to those mid 60s to be competitive as a short class bodybuilder. But until you've done those things, until you've pushed your body to those extremes and know where it is that you need to sit, like it's very, very hard to. Everyone always underestimates how much body fat they've got on them.
Yeah.
I've had guys where they like on Instagram or things like that, they've said, oh, can you, because I don't know about you, but I've looked at thousands of before and after photos now. Like I've got quite a good eye for body fat percentage. So if somebody wants their body fat assessing, I'll just say, right, okay, send me some physique shots, like front, side, and rear, and I can give you a guesstimate of where it'll be. And they send them through, and you're probably like the high 20s, maybe early 30s body fat percentage. And they're like, no way, like I can still see my abs. And it's like, yeah, but when you turn around, like you store a lot of your body fat on your back. Like people massively underestimate like how hard a prep is. Like I don't know about for you, but for me, getting down to 10 to 12% body fat now, it's a walk in the park. Like I can do it fairly flexibly. Like I can still have cheat meals like once a week and it's not a problem. But getting from that 10% down to the 3 to 5% is a whole different ball game in terms of what goes on, both physiologically and
Yeah,
psychologically.
I mean, my first prep, I was natural at the time. I'm assisted now. I mean, first and foremost, you're right. It is, in essence, it is so much easier when you're assisted. You can eat more food. It's very easy to take body fat off, especially when you've been doing it for a while. There's other elements that obviously aren't as easy. There's a lot more that you have to worry about if you're doing it in the right
Yeah.
way. But when I was natural and I did my first show, I was in no position to decide to compete. Like I was obese. I was 110 kilos, very fucking fat, and I pulled off for my first show. I pulled off 30 kilos in 9 months.
Right.
Which I mean, but look, when you're that fat, you're taking off the first 15 kilos in 2 months, right? It flies off,
Yeah.
and then you start digging. And then I did my first show with the UK DFBA, and I thought I was completely shredded. And you get to that arena, you look at all the rest of the guys there, you're thinking, oh, you know, there's levels to this, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Immediately had a huge panic attack, thinking I'm not even going to step on stage. Stepped on stage. It was very humbling. And then I had a second show the week after, and at this point, I'm thinking I've done everything I can. I took another like 3.5 kilos off in 2 weeks. You know, just
Yep.
because, okay, if we're going to do it, the food is going to be below 1,000 calories. The cardio is going to be, nearly an hour and a half a day, 20,000 steps. And that 2 week block, I probably learned more about what I could endure and
Yeah.
what I needed to do. Perhaps I coached myself at that point, so I knew next to nothing about how to do a prep. So, that 2 week block taught me probably more than what I'd learned in the previous 9 months, and you're right.
Yeah.
People definitely overestimate. I have people say, how much do you think I'd have to take off for a prep? They tell me like 10 kilos. And I was like, probably looking at 20 kilos to be competitive, And one of my good friends, he competed and went to finals, and he was shredded. I'm talking, he already had glute striations, and between regionals and finals, he took off another 2.5 kilos. I was like, where the fuck are you taking this body fat from?
Yes.
But it's definitely a learning experience. And do you feel like as a dad, we're in a very lucky position, right? We're coaches, and technically bodybuilding is our job to a certain degree. Do you think a regular dad with a regular job, 9 to 5, with all the pressures, do you think they're in a similar position where they can do it easily, or do you think we're in a unique situation?
I think everybody's situation is slightly different. I think some of the factors that are going to be the age of your kids. So if your kids are very young, it's going to be much harder because they are so much more dependent on you at that age. So the guy that won the British nationals for UK, the FBA and the BMBF is a guy called Chris Palin. Like, he is just a normal regular dad. I think he works in a factory or something like that. Like, he has a normal 9 to 5. But I was speaking to him kind of like, even though he was in my class, like, this is one of the things I love about bodybuilding. Like, even though you're in competition, a lot of people have a lot of respect for the other competitors. Even though I'm trying to beat you, I also know the blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into this process. So I've got a lot of respect for you. So yeah, Chris he's just a normal guy. Like, he's got kids, he's got a job. I think his wife like works for one of the tanning like companies or something like that. But he was saying how like everyone at his job thinks he's crazy because he comes in, he's got his porridge oats and his protein shake first thing in the morning, like the first thing of the shift, and then his second break he's got his turkey and sweet potato and broccoli, and then in the next one he's got his turkey sweet potato. Like, he's proper old school, literally just eating the same shit, different portions, and it works for him. Like, at the end of the day, like, he got his pro card. Whenever anybody competed against Chris, it was always Chris in first, and then everybody else competing for second and third. So it was one of those things. He's been kicking about for 10, 12, 13 years. He had to take a break in the middle when his kids were younger because he was competing before, then he had kids, and it was like, it's not easy. Like, when you've got young kids, it's not. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, you're probably going to struggle to get everything in terms of a prep. Like, prep and off season in bodybuilding are two completely different beasts. Like, you can be flexible in your off season. You can have a life. Not everything needs to revolve around bodybuilding in the off season, but in a prep, it's completely different. And I think that when your kids are young, they're not going to understand that. And you're probably not going to be as present as you need to be as a father when they're that young. It can be done. It's just a lot harder. Now, when they're that little bit older and they're a little bit more independent, then you probably could find the time if it was really important to you to do that.
And talking about importance, as a coach, what did you find happened with your business when you competed? Because I competed, and it gave me almost like the credibility to say, I can transform my physique. Therefore, this is a portion of evidence to say that I can transform your physique. How did you find the business?
So I think, like you said, like social media it's a fickle thing. Like in my second prep, because I was documenting it a lot, and I was actually working for a gym. So I wasn't self-employed. I was working for a gym. So like my social media was just my own. I could just post about my own journey. And like my following went from like 1,000 up to like 10,000 over that prep. And then I transferred into an off season and started focusing more on the coaching content. And in the 2 years since then, it's gone from like 10,000 to maybe 11. So it's one of those things where, like you said, when you can put yourself through that, it's natural. I think it's human nature to look at that and go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing for himself. He must know what he's doing to help me. Now, I would always caution somebody if they're going to choose a coach purely going off the fact that they can get themselves in shape. Like, yes, if they can get themselves in shape, they know a system. Have they replicated it with others? Have they been able to help other people that are similar to you get the results that you want? So obviously, if you want to do bodybuilding, then yes, that's great. But I know of coaches and influencers that then they use their physique to then sell like a lifestyle program, and are like, oh yeah, you can eat whatever you want and you can go out every weekend on the lash and still get results. And then the people get inside their program and it's like, right, it's chicken, rice and broccoli 3 meals a day. You can't drink for the next 12 weeks, and we're booking a photo shoot in for you, even though they never asked to do one. And so it's just, use it as inspiration if that's the level of results that you would like, but always do your homework and always make sure before handing over money that you've spoken to that individual like multiple times, whether it's in the DMs, whether it's jumping on a call with them. Just because they're pushing you to obviously try and sell you their programs, they're a business at the end of the day. You can always say no and come back to it at a later date.
I'm a big believer in there's the right coach for the right client and vice versa. Like, if you don't gel with a client, it's not going to work, right? And, I think one of the biggest things people, especially clients, and if anyone's watching this and they want advice, is do your homework, like you say, but also look at the type of clients that coach is working with, because the biggest red flag, as I'm sure you've seen it as well, is if you go on a coach's page and all you've got is selfies of them and selfies of their physique, that they've probably had a pretty good physique naturally all their life anyway. If they're not posting regular photos of different clients that they've worked with, it's a bit of a red flag for me. And I know everyone can do it in different ways, but you want to see that if you want to be a bodybuilder and with this coach, well, they better be getting those results with bodybuilders. If they're working with really overweight individuals, just helping them to get a little bit healthier, they're probably not going to be the right coach for you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, there's so much choice out there nowadays. And I think COVID pushed the level of, let's call it excellence within the industry. Like if you go back 5-10 years, the only way to be able to see a PT was to go down to your local gym. And then that's going to be really hit and miss on how good the local PTs are, because it's just, they could be terrible, they could be amazing. And the whole industry was set up to churn out level 2 and level 3 PTs because the gyms basically took advantage of them. Like if you go into Pure Gym or you go into any of the big gym chains, right, you've got your level 3s there that are either working for them for 12 hours a week for nothing, or they're paying them 300, 400, 500, 600 pounds a month in rent, regardless of how many clients they've got. So the gyms are making money off the personal trainers regardless of um, whether they're successful. And they knew that there was always this conveyor belt of new trainers coming out that are going to go and fill those gym floor hours and hand leaflets out and clean machines for them and do it for, I think that it's changed now where they pay them minimum wage, but then they charge them rent as well. So you work for 12 hours for minimum wage to earn 500 quid, and then you've got to pay £600 out in rent. So it's a really, really cutthroat industry. But with online coaching and with more people moving online, people are finding that, like you said, they can find the right coach for them. And just because you might have tried online coaching and had a bad experience with a coach, it doesn't mean that all coaches coach like that. Maybe that coach just wasn't a good fit for you, and that's okay. Like, I've had to have discussions with clients before where when we were signing up, they said all the right things, and then we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the program, and you're like 4, 5, 6 weeks in, and you keep having the same discussions over and over again. And you have to sit them down and go, look, I don't want to keep, like, you're not a child, you're an adult. I don't want to keep having to like tell you off because you're not implementing what I need you to do. And these are the basics. So my program builds off foundations and then we build layers on top of it. If you're not able to implement the basics, then I feel like I'm taking money off you, but you're not going to get a result. And I want to be a results-based coach. So you need to have a think about whether you're ready to make these changes right now or whether we should call it a day here so that you don't waste your money and we don't waste each other's time.
Yeah, and it's always a difficult conversation to have. And we are you with Fortis? I should have clarified that. Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been with Fortis. For anyone watching, Fortis is a online coach or PT mentorship program, right? You know, you have your business mentor, you have resources, and you can streamline your business, and that's what sent my my business, you know, getting more and more successful, is having that structure in place. But one of the things that we discuss quite a lot on the coffee chats is, you know, when to have the discussion with a client that it's probably time to part ways. You know, because as you've alluded to, you know, you can have someone sign up, and some people are happy to pay an exorbitant amount of money each month and do fuck all with it. And I don't know why, because if I'm paying my coach what I charge, I'm getting my money's worth. You know, I don't have that money to waste, as I'm sure you don't, but some people do. And my thought process behind it is, if I'm not getting the results for someone for whatever reason, it's always better to part ways on amicable terms than them say, you didn't get me results, I don't want to be your client anymore. You know, because you have to have those honest discussions.
And that's just it. It's one of those things, as you said, it's way easier to cut that off before the relationship then turns nasty. And they're 2, 3, 4 months in, and they're like, you said that this is the result that would happen. And you're trying to explain that, look, we do have a money back guarantee, but in order to get that, these are the things that we needed you to do. Can you honestly say to me that you've ticked every single one of these boxes? And then again, it's one of those things. It's making sure you got all your paperwork and everything in place, isn't it? Like, and that you've got that accountability and that you can show that, look, I tried to contact you here, here, and here. We tried to get you back on board. We got extra calls in. We did this, we did that. And at the end of the day, as a coach, I can only, what's the expression? You can only lead a horse to water. You can't force them to drink. I can only give you the tools. I can only give you the advice and the set expectations. Anything that we as coaches set you, I don't know about you, but I will discuss it with the client first. So if I'm setting somebody up, if I'm onboarding somebody, right, when we first set out, we'll set out the long-term goals, the next 12-week block, and then daily things I need you to be doing. But I'm on a call. I'm talking through these with you. So whether it's we're training 3 days a week or 4 days a week, whether it's getting like 5,000 steps in or 8,000 steps, like, I'm confirming that all these are appropriate goals for me to be setting you. And if you have a problem with it, that's when then you need it. That's when you need to bring it up with me, because that's when we can then make changes. I, as a coach, can only make suggestions. I can't force you to do anything, because unless you're coaching like teens for bodybuilding, like most people that sign up for online coaching are going to be adults. So they've got to take a certain amount of personal responsibility for their journey, because we can't do it for them. If I could literally just hook somebody up to a machine and I do all the work for them, I'd be the richest person in the world, because you'd be able to get, people would just pay you whatever you wanted, because you'd go and do it for them and they'd get the results. But unfortunately, life's not like
And don't
that.
you think that that's the unfortunate thing, that they're probably the most successful coaches out there to a certain degree that make the most money are those that do promise those kind of results and do say, you know what, all you got to do is take this magic pill and you're gonna get amazing results. And probably more supplement companies do that than coaches, because coaches are going to get sought out very easily. But there is definitely those unscrupulous people out there that are going to prey on the easy targets, as it were. But mate, I just want to take it back to the social media, because you touched on that a little bit. And you know, you're a dad, and I have these constant thoughts and battles between myself. You know, I've got a young daughter, I've got a young son, and who knows what social media is going to be like in the next, 13 years, when they're of an age where they're going to want to start experiencing social media. We don't know what it's going to be like, but being a social media presence and having a strong following, what would you say to parents, especially relating to fitness? Because, body image is out there, right? What would you say to your dads in regards to how to manage their kids and social media?
That's definitely a hard one, because I've got two stepsons as well, and one's 13 and one's 19. So they're very much in the social media sort of space. What I'm finding is that the next generation, they're obviously, the trends are moving across to like TikTok rather than like your Facebook and your Instagram. So we as parents are probably more familiar with Facebook because we grew up with it. Same thing with Instagram's that next kind of like generation down, but all the kids now are watching TikTok or like YouTube shorts. So depending on how old your kids are, so on my 13-year-old's phone, because he's got an Android phone, we have an app called Family Link. So with that, basically, I have the parental side of it, but you can set restrictions. So like I can set it so that it automatically goes off at like 10 p.m. so that again he's not on screen all night. You can set time restrictions. We haven't done that for like certain apps, but it also sends me a push notification anytime he's trying to download something new. So again, you can set it so that age appropriate things only come up. And one time he clicked a dodgy link and it came up and it flashed up as something completely inappropriate for a 12, 13-year-old to be downloading. And I was like, what's this? And it was like, I promise that I just clicked a link on a YouTube video. I didn't know what it was. I was like, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. But there are definitely protections and stuff you can put in place and to set boundaries. Like at the end of the day, when we were growing up, my phone, like all I could do on it was text. I couldn't get on the internet. Like there are things you can kind of put in place in safeguards. And then something that I'm going to discuss with my wife, like when my daughter gets to that age, is that when she gets her phone, it's not her phone, it's our phone, and she's allowed to use it rather than it being her possession. Because once she feels like it's her possession, then the whole, right, I want to check what's going on in there. You're allowed your privacy. However, there is a lot of weirdos out there that want to be kind of getting into those things. And I don't want, again, it's a really gray area, isn't it? Like, where does the privacy boundary and the protectionist boundary like fall? So at the end of the day, if at any time I could go and say, I want to have a look on your phone, is that being too strict, or is that being protectionist? Like, it's
Oh, yeah, and I love that question.
kind of
You know,
where I'm
that's why I
at.
asked it, because I haven't got a fucking clue. You know, I just don't have
Yeah,
the answer. I think, sure, you know, it's like case by case, day by day, and surely it's going to be going like it's going to be fluctuating. You know, one day,
yeah,
you know, they've been trustworthy, as it were, not doing anything that you think is risky to them and their safety, and then it might change, and they might be like pushing the boundaries a little bit, and you have to kind of take a little bit back. I just don't
yeah.
fucking know. But do you think that, you know, a few years ago, it was all about being skinny and eating less and being tiny? I've definitely seen a trend of more kind of positive image to a certain degree on
Yeah.
Instagram. Now, you've got a daughter. Do you think there is more positivity in terms of encouraging girls to lift weights, not be skinny, but actually, you know, develop their physiques? Do you think there's more positivity now, or do you think there's more detriment now because there is more female physique athletes out there?
I think it's definitely so. This is a really hard one because where do you draw the line between like body positivity and also promoting unhealthy like lifestyles? So the way I go around this is everybody's perfect exactly with the way they are. However, we could all use a little improvement. So it's remembering that being obese to the point where it is a detriment to your health is different to, say, a girl or a woman that's a size 12 to 14 feeling like she's inadequate because she's not a size 0. Like, those are two completely different arguments, I feel like, within my own experience. So, in terms of the body positivity side of it, I think there is a lot more body positivity on Instagram. I think Facebook is still pretty much just a moan fest, whereas Instagram is a lot more of people showing the highlight reels of their life. So I think that comes with its own set of issues, as in you've got these teenagers looking at these influencers and looking at their lives, and they're comparing their highlight reel to my normal life, and then I feel inadequate. In terms of the physique side of stuff, I think because social media is giving a platform so you can actually see behind the scenes, and more athletes are more open to show that, especially the female athletes, that in the off season I do get softer. I do lose those lines. Like, I am a little bit curvier, and actually that's healthy. Like, female physique athletes, they walked around like they do in the bikini shows or in whatever shows they do all year round. That's not healthy. The female body has to have a certain amount of body fat for proper hormonal function and everything like that. So I think it's definitely better in terms of the fact that, well, even actually male athletes, like, I think people are a lot more real on social media nowadays. They're not afraid to show what goes on behind the scenes in their life, and actually people respond much better to that, rather than the guy that's posting, as you said, topless selfies all year round, claiming to be shredded all year round, but then somebody snaps him like on holiday somewhere and he's got a bit of a beer gut going on, because actually that's how he looks in the off season, but he doesn't show it.
Yeah, I definitely get. I like to think of myself as the lifestyle bodybuilder that's got the ultimate balance, because I
Yeah.
will absolutely have the takeaways very regularly, especially in off season. You know, I make the most of off season, but then even in a prep, I make sure I don't miss. My rule to myself was never miss a social event. You know, you might have to
Mm.
go without within that social event, but I'll always be there. I'll always go to the pub, but make better choices. I'll always go to the parties. I went on stag do's probably 3 months from show. I was on the stag do's, you know. So that was my MO of make sure bodybuilding doesn't be all consuming and you don't lose out on the
Mm.
other elements of life. You know, I always try and not enforce it, but push that on my clients as well. You know, no matter what your goals are, make sure you don't miss out. You know, if you've got a birthday
Yeah.
party, don't fucking track, because that's going to be miserable. Have the fucking birthday cake, because that's part of life. You know, fitness for me is, it enriches life. It doesn't detract from it. Don't know if
Yeah.
you have the same ethos with that.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I'm quite lucky, as in my coach understands that because we've communicated about that. So because he knows I'm a coach and I'm not just making excuses for it, and he's also seen that I'm able to get into that level of condition and still have that balance, because I understand about calorie borrowing and moving things around, and that if I'm having a little bit more because it's Willow's birthday, that I'll then make allowances for that kind of like in other areas. And it's one of those things where people like look at you when you're like super lean and they think that you just live like a monk, but you don't have to. Like you said, like fitness should enrich your life, not take away from it. And I think too many people go too polar. They're either all in or all out. And for me personally, I prefer to treat it more like a dimmer switch than an on-off switch. So at certain times of the year, then right, it's going to be like 8 or 9 out of 10 in terms of importance. I'm going to make sure that like every single thing's being nailed. And then at other times of the year, shit hits the fan, stuff goes wrong, like you might be super busy. So you might crank that down to a 3 or 4. But there's always a minimum amount you need to get done in order to not move backwards. That's the mistake a lot of people make. They don't realize that it's so easy to maintain. It's so easy. At 2 full body workouts a week and not overeating, you'll probably maintain. Like, if you can't find an hour a week to exercise and just be a little bit more mindful in terms of your eating, then you really need to look at your schedule and be more efficient with it. But what most people do is they just completely switch off, overeat, don't train at all, and then come back to it in 6 months in a worse position than when they first started. And then it's even more of an uphill battle because they're even more overweight. They've lost muscle mass because they've detrained now for 6 months. Like, and it's that stopping and starting, which is the biggest problem, rather than pushing forward when you can and then pumping the brakes. Like, life's busy. Like, it's okay to it to not be a priority. When people say that they don't have time, I tend to challenge them on that, and then I'll ask them a few questions and I'll say, okay, so what you really mean is it's not a priority for you right now. And that's okay to say that, but how does that make you feel? And they know that their health should be a priority. So again, they start then making the excuses again. It's like, well, I'm going to stop you there. Like, you've just told me this, this, and this. And you're finding time to do those things. So it's just not a priority, and it's okay. But again, a lot of people struggle with that. And if you are honestly telling yourself that you don't have time to get these things done, try saying it's not a priority for me right now and see how that feels. And if it doesn't feel right, then you need to change something to make that time, or else it's only going to get harder the longer that you leave it.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. It's okay, isn't it? You know, not everybody needs to be going balls to the wall and achieving something. You can achieve something and just stay there. Just stay there for a little bit and just enjoy where you're at and do the bare minimum. And just make sure you don't go backwards, because that's when it gets really fucking tough mentally and physically, because you got to get it all back and then progress, right? So, mate, we've been on for nearly 50 minutes now, which is awesome. But what I want to do, I want to leave you with this final question. I'm planning on asking everybody, because I think it's something that I ask myself all the time, is if you could go back and you could speak to a younger version of you in terms of fitness, and then let's talk about business as well. What are the 2 things you would tell that younger person to do? So what would you tell them to do to get a better physique earlier? And what would you do to tell them to do better in business?
So to get a better physique earlier, don't be afraid to ask for help. So when I was, 21 and graduated from university, I thought I was the absolute dog's bollocks. I knew everything I needed to know about training, and I was fucking amazing. But now at 32, I feel I know less now than I did at 21, because the more that you know, the more you realize that you don't know. And as I've been training with weights now since I was 13, so that's what, 19 years. I learn new things from my coach now that even after 19 years of experience. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you're struggling, then hire a coach. Like, there's two ways that you can invest in your fitness. It's either going to be with money or with time. Time is a lot harder to get back. You can always make more money. You can't make more time. So if fitness is a priority, hire a good coach, and it cuts that learning curve at minimum in half, if not more. And in terms of business, what would I do in terms of business? I don't want it to be the same thing about hiring a coach, so I'm trying to think. So it's one of those things where surrounding yourself with different tiers of people. So not just surrounding yourself with other coaches that are at the same level as you. So building a network of people that are further ahead than you, also people that are around the same level, but also people that are a little bit behind that you can help to elevate and give advice to. Because what it does is it grounds you, because it reminds you of there's more that you could be doing, and that those high level talks on how to reach that next level. But if you only spend that time, only spend all your time with those people, you feel inadequate, as in that you're not where they are right now. If you spend all your time with people at that same level, you then don't have any drive to push you forward. But the advantage of speaking to people that are on the same sort of level as you is you can bounce ideas off each other, and you can troubleshoot, and you can try new things and see what's working for other people, and then put your own spin on it. And then the last thing of having people that are maybe new and need some advice and some of the basics is you can pass on some of that knowledge of the mistakes that you made. And a big thing within the fitness industry is that everybody's so cutthroat and competitive. I don't know if you ever worked on the gym floor, but normally the PTs there do everything that they can to fuck each other over. But the way I think of it is, if you can help improve another coach, as the tide comes in, all the boats level up. So if there's more than enough clients out there for all the coaches that are out there, like, I don't know about you, but if I can only handle a maximum of, say, 30 to 40 clients, there's something like 2 billion people on Instagram. There's more than enough to go around. But if we can level up the industry and make it so that there's more good quality coaches out there, people have more faith in it, we can then attract those people that aren't necessarily into fitness right now, get them involved in fitness, get them involved in health, and be improving not just the quality of our clients' lives, but their families and their extended families, by having more people that are able to level themselves
You know,
up.
you're singing to the choir. Yeah, I never worked on the gym floor. When I decided to push the business, my first gig was I had my own studio. My studio. It was a garage that I converted into a PT studio. It was a fucking studio, and I will not have anyone tell me otherwise. But the area that I lived in, Mansfield, it was saturated with PTs, small group PT, like venues, gyms. It was, for some reason, Mansfield is just, well, you live in Grantham, so you're not a million miles away from Mansfield,
Yes.
right? It was just saturated. And even though I was this small one-person PT just started, the amount of, you're right, cutthroat, you know, the amount of people that would slag you off and do this and try and poach clients. I've always been of the mindset of exactly like what you said. Let's all work together. Let's make this better. Let's learn from each other. Let's talk to each other. And I think that's the main reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is so that I can talk to coaches and hopefully break down some of those barriers. Because if I'm talking to you right now and there's a dad out there and he wants to work with someone that's specifically for dads, well, they need to go with you, right? If they think that I'm a good fit, then they'll reach out. But if we talk more, if we learn more, and like you say, raise the industry, it's going to be a better place to work, right?
100%.
Cool. Mate, look, I love that. But tell people if they want to get in touch with you, I will be linking all your social medias. I'll get you to drop them over to me later. But how do they get in touch?
So easiest place to find me is over on Instagram at thedadbod_coach. I have got like YouTube and things like that, but to be honest, I'm most active over on Instagram. So yeah, if you need some help, need some advice, anything like that, ping me across the DM on Instagram. I'm more than happy to have a chat.
Fantastic. Lovely. Well, thanks for your time, dude. And have a good day.
No worries, dude. Enjoy the rest of your day.
That's ISO. Rack it up, I gotta build up the bank to make me a safe house. Shake it up, she got her hands on her knees and she bringing the cake out. Smoke it up, I got some gas, some packs, I'm up in the green.